Good Sunday morning. This is hashtag everyone talking about hashtag everything. I'm Kate Doherty with the Radical Ryan, the Practically Perfect Penny, and the Magnificent Mac and the lovely Laura are on their way. However, we're going to go ahead and start taping today because we got a lot to talk about.
It's time.
And we've got different things coming out. First, though, I want to give a shout out to the Culver Stockton Wildcats,
Big time.
who invited Downcountry to their football game last Saturday. So fun. Such a really good time. Kids got to go on the field. They got to hang out with the players. Such a nice group of young men. And since it's that time of year, the Culver Stockton Wildcat football team will be joining us at Rhinestones and Rodeo this year, working with the Marion County FFA to help serve our food and model our model and just be the super cool human Wildcats that they are. So we're very excited about this and super grateful to all of them for that. And a side note, you heard me mention Rhinestones and Rodeo.
Yes.
So do you know what goes out tomorrow morning?
What?
The invitations
There
to
it is.
Rhinestones and Rodeo.
It is.
It is that time of year, and we really appreciate it. We typically, our year ends in the end of October, and what that means is we're destitute, so we really need you to get those tickets in and those purchases and those tables bought. We have 90 tables. It is our 15th year. It will be January 10th, and we're super excited this year. But anyway, those invitations will go out. And also, we're going to do something new this year. In addition to the hard copy invitations, we're also going to be sending out e-invites. So if you get one of those in your little text message inbox, it's not spam. It's just called trying to reach as many people as humanly possible. So anyway, very excited about that. And we just this past Sunday had our iLearn meeting and a Downcountry board meeting. In the board meeting, we awarded our scholarship recipients. So mum's the word on that and who those are until January.
That's right.
However, in the course of the iLearn meeting, which was before the board meeting, it was really interesting. I was having a conversation with some of our iLearns, and they were talking about just different things within the constructs of a typical school day.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to kind of hear different perspectives and different things. And that's one of the best things about Downcountry is you do get a community member such as Ryan, a therapist such as Penny. You have a doctor like some of our recipients. You have teachers. You have paras. And you have parents. And I think when it comes to the constructs of a typical school day, there are probably, what's the word I want to use? Some realities that I don't think when it comes to the education conversation, people exactly want to talk about them. And Ryan and Penny, call me if you think of, I would say most of the time when people talk about school and learning, they talk about academics. Would you guys say that's the educational component?
Oh, 100%, yeah.
I mean, that's what they talk about. And academics are very important. Nobody's going to ever tell you that academics aren't important. However, when it comes to how people view, I guess, a typical school day, sometimes part of the conversation or the assumption that you operate, like when you go in these meetings and they're talking about how much time you have specialized instruction, how much time you have generalized instruction, how much time you have this, they're looking at it as 100% of an 8-hour school day is on academic progression. Would you guys say that like most of the time you hear those conversations?
Yeah.
I mean, and even if you were to look at an individualized education plan, which is known as an IEP, you would look at, they base most of those minutes off of the assumption of the entire school day being academics, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So let me give you my perspective after 25 years in. I have not ever been in nor worked with a school district that was able to maintain 8 hours a day of pure academic instruction. As somebody who homeschooled her child for 6 months, there's no way I would have been capable of doing 8 hours of pure academic instruction. It's not possible. our brains don't work that way. The average adult has an attention span of 15 minutes. And then you need to switch. And if you think about the way you work, I would say most of the time, all of us, whether we're actually really working, like you bob and weave kind of based on approximately that, like you go hard and then you switch it up and you do something a little different. You go hard and you switch it up. Would you say like that's kind of how we actually do it?
Absolutely. I will do something and then I have to like stop and then I get sidetracked and it's just sometimes I don't do it on purpose. It just naturally happens. Like I get sidetracked, I start doing something else and then I'm like, oh wait, I got to finish this. I finish, it's just, but like my brain is, I can't just be like when I lock into something and then when I'm done, I am like burnt. So I'm like, okay, I need a second here. I get up, I go walk around the building, go say hi to somebody, talk to somebody for like 5 minutes or whatever. And then I come back and I feel like, oh yeah, I gotta do that project. And I get right back into something else, but it gives my brain a break, No, I very early on in this profession that I'm in, I stayed very locked in, like for long extended periods of time. And like, even when I was off the clock, like I was doing stuff, like I was like, I have to do all this in order to be really good. And I need to know all this. I need to, and I'm just, reading stuff and doing this, doing that. And it burnt me out to the point where I was like, I don't like doing this anymore. And I just didn't want to do it, and again, my wife had to tell me, she's like, well, you're doing way too much than what you actually need to do. Like, obviously you want to push and be as good as you can in a profession and be the best that you can. But no one is telling you to be hyper-focused for, as you're putting it, 8 hours a day or, just these long extended periods of time. Like, you have to be in doing all of this. But I don't know how you feel about that, Penny, but like, that's where my mind goes.
Well, I think I have a lot of thoughts, but I guess I came in a smidge after you and Ryan had already started talking. But what is your premise to what you're focusing on? Because I think that I immediately my thought is, what does academic really mean? Is it including social?
No.
So,
okay,
but
so
that's what I kind of thought. But what is your point?
Well,
that sounds so abrupt, but I didn't know how else to say it.
Okay, you did come at the end of it.
Yeah,
we had an iLearn meeting.
Yeah.
We had some parents who have some significant concerns with their children, like an amount of placement in their time. In this particular case, they were like, well, we're supposed to be in 50% of the time. And if you're listening to the show, what does that mean? That means they're supposed to be in general education 50% of the time.
Right.
And they are concerned because they don't feel that they are getting communication from the general education teacher. So this is, and when I was speaking to them, I was like, oh, that's where that whole parents have an assumption, or I would say typical people who are not in education or in life, that academics, and when you sit in an IEP meeting, that is the main focus, is the academic progression, because schools are quote unquote educational settings. We kind of talked about this last week with the pros and cons. Anyway, so here's the reality. Their kiddo is in 45 minutes in the morning. This is an elementary school kiddo. And they are in 45 minutes of gen ed in the afternoon. And they said, we don't feel like we're getting ownership by the general education teacher. And my response was, you aren't. The kiddo is not the general, with the amount of time that you are currently in the general education, that is not her kid. It is the special education teacher's kid who has the remainder of their day. And they're like, well, we just don't know what academics they're focusing on. And I'm like, well, it's an elementary school classroom. Here's the way any elementary school I've ever walked in is set up. That first hour of the day is spent essentially getting kids in, getting coats off, getting backpacks in, dealing with late arrivals, trying to settle them in. We're going to read a book. We're going to have story time. You're essentially the first hour of an elementary school day. You are, quite frankly, focused on behavior management.
No doubt.
On getting them in the little routine. And you have littles.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
It's called transitioning. Transitioning from here to there.
You
and
have to
settling
go
them
there.
in.
They may have gotten in trouble on the bus. They may have had a bad morning with mom. That first hour of the day, that is what is spent in, I would argue, I'm certain I'm probably going to get a phone call on this, but almost any elementary school I have ever been in my life, I have not, I mean, this is what you do in that first hour. You were correct. It's called transitioning. The end of the day in an elementary school is kids are tired. They're hungry. Many elementary schools are feeding kids about 10:30 in the morning. Maybe if you're lucky, they're getting a snack time. That's if that's the policy of the school. Yeah. And so that last hour of the day, kids are done. They are done. They are either tired or cranky. And so what you're doing at the end of the day is you're doing a wrap up. And you're doing like story time, or you're doing a little bit of recess. And this is in the elementary schools what you're doing with these kiddos. So if you are expecting academics in the first 45 or the last 45 of the day, it's not a reality. And it's not that the teacher isn't doing a wonderful job. It's not that they aren't teaching. It's not that they aren't doing those things. That's the reality of the structure of the school day.
Right.
And so it's interesting because one of the things you'll see, like, so you have choices. And unfortunately, the dialogue when it comes to education is we don't tell people they have choices. If you were to ask me my bias when it comes to including children, like actually the behavior management component has to be primary. That we don't allow them to crawl under the desks, that we don't allow them to throw chairs, that we don't allow them to throw pencils, that we don't allow them to be a harm to themselves or to others. Right. That we teach them to be bored. Being bored is a very valuable skill. Now, having said that, that is not, you're going to say, Kate, education, academics, reading, writing, arithmetic is the first predominant portion of the school day. That very well may be. However, the fact of the matter is, if I have a kid who's hungry, who's tired, whose basic biological needs are not being met, there is no education that can occur. And as long as we continue to not have that whole child framework as part of this discussion, parents, teachers, therapists are going to continue to bang their head against the wall because, like in this case, I got a mom and dad who are really frustrated because they want their kid in gen ed, or at least part of the time. They don't want her in the full time, but they want her in, but they want her exposed to the academics. Well, by the very structure, she's not going to get exposed to academics. My suggestion was I think you should get a tutor for her if you're really concerned about the academics, because when she goes into her other specialized education setting, they're using a whole different curriculum, a modified curriculum. It's not the same thing as what's being exposed to in the general education environment. So it's not that it's not, and every parent, the I, seems to get left out of these individualized education plans. And that is the most important part of it, because the parent does have to decide what is most important to you. And part of what I wanted to talk about is, like we just did, the pros and cons of special education. Yeah. Well, when we use that term inclusion, you've got to decide what is your goal. And schools originally, with all due respect, like when you started the whole public school setting, what were they designed for? Does anybody know? In the early 1900s?
Academics only.
No, that's what the colleges were designed for. Public school, we'll do it when we go on break. We're going to do an AI. Okay. They were actually designed for workforce development.
Oh, well, okay, academic. Yeah. I'm thinking academic as far as teaching them something, not behavior, not parenting, not feeding, not all of that stuff. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, like if you're talking Harvard when it's originally, yes, but they were being homeschooled by private tutors, and then you went to college. I mean, if you're looking at this historically accurate, and so, you're right. When you went to Harvard, that was academic, and that was purely academic, and you would have had a private tutor throughout. As far as educating our populace, this is a whole different way. And yet we haven't changed our dialogue in 100 years. And it's problematic because you put all these new rules and regs on and you haven't changed the conversation.
Sorry, he's waving at us.
All right. So for now, this is hashtag everyone talking about hashtag everything. We'll be right back. Good Sunday morning. This is hashtag everyone talking about hashtag everything. I'm Kate Doherty with the Radical Ryan. Magnificent Mac isn't here yet. We did go on ahead and start taping because, that's just us.
We're doing the thing.
We're doing the thing. We started taping without the lovely Laura. We're catching her up on the fly.
Hello, Laura.
And Practically Perfect Penny is like, Kate and Ryan had a whole conversation before I even walked in the door, and now I'm like trying to play catch up from the neck up.
And she's back, too.
And she is back too.
She's back.
so
Doing her
sweet.
thing.
She is
I've
back
been
too.
gone a long time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that mic's not going to work with you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a-
So-
There, I'll be loud.
That's it. Yeah,
there
yell
you
at it.
Express
Okay.
yourself.
Okay, so guys, when we were on break, we were talking about kind of just conversations that I don't think, unless you're in the field, kind of the average bear is familiar with. And it kind of started out as there's, I think, an assumption that academics, and quite frankly, if you talk about the education, for lack of bureaucracy, like the basic thing is, well, schools are for reading, writing, learning. Well, schools may be for reading, writing, learning, but they have morphed into something much, much more than that. And so reading, writing, learning, while it is a very core component of the day, reading and writing, and arithmetic, not learning.
go.
Sorry,
That's
thank
fine.
you. I'm old.
That's okay.
Reading, writing, and think is a very core component of the day, and they are exceptionally important. It's not happening 8 hours a day. You have art class, you have music class, you have physical education class, maybe, although sometimes they take that out, which is really unfortunate because little bodies need to move. You have, if you're in an elementary school, you have recess, you have playground, you have lunch. You have a lot of stuff that happens. You have fire drills you have to do. You have stranger danger drills you have to do. There's a whole plethora of things that interfere. When you're talking about a child with special needs, right now, when you have a conversation, there's an assumption that, well, if you write this IEP plan and, you write it right, then everything's going to magically morph into place.
Right.
And I think that part of this conversation, as we're looking at all these different changes, we have to have a conversation about what reality looks like in public schools. Reality in elementary schools, you start the day and you have about an hour of transition time. Thank you for that fancy word, by the way, Penny. I
Yeah.
There
appreciate
it
it.
is. Look at that.
At the end of the day, you have an hour of transition time. I would say during lunch service /PE, you probably have an hour of what would be known as transition, or you know what I mean, or recess, not PE. You probably have an hour. So that's 3 hours of your 8 hour day. That leaves you 5 hours left, correct?
It's good math.
Okay, so then 5 hours of those that day,
All right.
okay, then you have a special, at least 1 hour of that day, correct? So now we're down to 4 hours of the day.
Even better math.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're already on the constructs of a 8 hour school day at 50% of the time that we're going to be doing full on academics. Is that a safe, kind of assumption?
I would agree, yes.
Okay. And all of you, Penny, you've been in schools. Laura, your kids just got done with school. I wish Mac was here because I really want to, Anyway, so that means 4 hours of the day, which would be English,
Yeah.
social studies, science, math. Correct? Those 4 core subject areas?
Yeah, I've already said.
Okay. So,
Penny's sitting on her hands. She
well,
wants to
then
jump
say
in.
something.
Ready.
Go in. You got 4 hours
I
a
know
day.
I'm interrupting. I'm just
No,
listening.
go.
I'm
You got-
such a better listener than I am.
You get 4 hours a day. Come on. So yeah, reading or English, math, social studies, science, right?
Right.
Go.
Okay. So what I was thinking, and not to take away from the crunching of the numbers, because I totally understand where you're going with this, but I think where we struggle is we're forgetting the human part of this. We can sit there and we can crunch numbers all day long. My husband's phenomenal at it, and I go brain dead when he does it, like I kind of am right now, perhaps, which is why I'm going like like this.
Right, yeah.
But the reality is the human component. I can tell you that I could get my child to behave for 4 hours today. But the reality is the human component is I'm going to struggle because there's all kinds of variables that go into managing humans and managing behaviors and what they bring to the table or what you bring to the table. And so sometimes I think we get so anal about it when there's a human component, and sometimes the teacher's just not on that day, or maybe sometimes that little kid is not on that day, and so we have to be aware of having that forgiveness factor and acceptance that we're not perfect. And even if we write it down in black and white on an IEP, guess what, boys and girls, we've yet to get anything like that happen all the time for us as adults, period. Okay, I'm done.
No, thank you. Actually, thank you, Penny. Actually, thank you, Penny, for
Got it.
Thank you, Penny, for making my point quite profusely, because actually, whether it's a child with an IEP, or a child without an IEP. That 4-hour framework that we're talking about, that's, you know what I mean? That basically, those 4 hours stay the same. However, you just made my point, because part of the current educational conversation that you have does not take into account that overarching the human component. The human component. Even I have had, and it depends on the school district because this is an administration thing, I have had teachers who have gone and said, please, I need you to move Johnny, Jimmy, Billy, Susie out of my class. Like, this is not going to be a good fit. Please, you know, I talked to Ms. So-and-so and we're going to swap these kids. Would you please do that? No. Like, why won't we do that? And they're like, that's not what we do. And you can say, Kate, that didn't. It has. I can tell you
it happened to me.
Oh, no, it happened.
3 years in a row.
I mean, this conversation, and you're like, that seems so simple. If a teacher's saying, I'm not the best fit for the child, like, why aren't we taking into account? Because the current educational framework does not take that into account. And you can say, well, that's wrong. Well, it may be, but that's part of what's driving some of these discussions that you're having, because you have dissatisfied teachers who are leaving in droves. You have dissatisfied therapists who are leaving in droves. You have dissatisfied parents who are seeking alternative things. You do have an issue here. And then if you add the special needs on top of it, you have a perfect storm. And until we begin, kind of which was the point of last show, the point of this show, having those honest conversations. But part of the problem is when you have that conversation and you're a parent sitting in a school district, the school district, quite frankly, is worried they're going to get sued. I mean, like, they're worried they're going to get sued. Well, we've got to follow the rules that are set before us. And that's a valid concern. That's a valid concern. If you're a parent, you're trying to figure out what it is you want for your kiddo. And since if you don't have any educational background.
And you don't know what your choices even are,
Thank
frankly.
you. And you also don't know how your words may or may not be used against you.
Right.
And that may not be the frame, but there are certain things, like if you say, I need my child to have more intensive academic instruction, well, FAPE, the very free and appropriate public education, which is the very thing, that need, that desire that you just advocated for your child, that they need more academic instruction, Merry Christmas, you just pulled them out of a general education environment so that they can get more one-on-one specialized instruction, which is also in most cases going to include a modified curriculum. And now you, wait, but I wanted my kid in with his typical peers. Well, yeah, but the very language you just used, you just got
And you don't
yourself
even know you did it.
You know, and you have no idea you even knew you did it. And here's the deal. I feel bad for schools. It's not their fault. I mean, I feel bad for schools. I feel bad for parents. I feel bad
For teachers.
for all of it. And here's the deal. I will tell you, I do work with 26 school districts in this area. There are so many people who love kids in these schools.
No, yeah.
Like, this is where that whole conversation has to be had about the framework. But what I'm going to say to parents, and if you're listening, or grandparents, if you're listening to the show, you do have a choice. And your choice is, when they use that term inclusion, you need to decide what that looks like for you. Do you want them? Because you can't have it all. And I'm really, as a female, I'm sorry, you can't have it all. Like, it is really hard. Balance is extraordinarily hard. People in my generation used to say the budge, you can bring home the bacon, you can fry it up in the pan, you can, all that good stuff. You can do it. You can have everything. Something has to give.
But I think isn't that, once again, I think in general, that's part of the problem. Just because you want it doesn't mean you're going to get it. And if you don't get it from that particular entity, then you might need to go supplement it yourself. And my case example would be, we chose to send our kids to a smaller school. That smaller school did not have a big music program. So as a result, at the very beginning of raising children, we made the decision we needed to supplement that because I felt like it was important for them to have music. It's not that they weren't getting it, they weren't getting enough of it from my perspective. So I had to supplement it. We took the kiddos, they did piano lessons, da-da-da-da-da. Did it last forever? No, because after a while you're just like, okay, that's obviously not that child's gig after all. But at least I did. I have to, as a parent, take ownership. I think sometimes as we're going from all different directions and feeling for everybody, I think the academic system has changed tremendously. That now they're expecting teachers to be parents and to feed these kids, and and everything has to be all inclusive. And the reality is, it's not the Ritz-Carlton. It's not going to be all inclusive, and you're going to have to take ownership as a parent to compensate, or if you want to figure out how to get it.
Well, and I think this.
Sorry, done again.
No, you hit it, because here's the thing. I feel like parents are being sold a bill of goods. Like they go to some of these trainings and people say things to them like, well, that's your right. You know what I mean? Like the school is required to provide therapy, or the school is required to do this, and the school is required to do that. Well, you may be correct. Like the school may be required to do that. However, it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And here's the thing, like a school may be required to provide therapy for your child if there's an educational need. However, what the school isn't required, if the school therapist has 70 kids on the caseload, more than likely you aren't going to be getting, I mean, occasionally you might get a worksheet home giving you some tips and tricks on ways to work with that kiddo. Yeah. But if all you're having your kid do is school-based therapy services, like you aren't going to get communication. You have to know what you want to work on at home. And you can say, well, Kate, not everybody has money for private therapy. Well, but there's free therapy platforms on almost any model that you can go and you can access to. But that means you have to do that at home. I mean, like you do have to do it at home. So you either have to help supplement that privately, or you have to find a free therapy-based service, program that you can, and they are out there. Don't tell me they aren't out there. And you also have to decide, do I want my child to have therapy within the school system where they'll be pulled out of potentially their academic day depending on, or do I want to supply that privately where I can be more of a participant in that? And so you're right, a school is required to provide therapy, but you know what? You can say, no thanks, I would prefer to get it here. You have that option. And so it does become, if you have the expectation that this is going to be everything and the school's somehow going to magically supply it, it's not going to happen. You, as a parent, are going to have to decide, okay, is inclusion really important to me? Because if inclusion is really important to me, that probably means you're going to need to get a tutor in the summer, and it probably means you're going to need to get a tutor after school, because if inclusion is really important, that means you got to kind of throw your kid to the wolves, and they're going to need to be in that general education environment. I'm not saying you can't pull out during some non-academic time for maybe some more specialized instruction, but if you really want them in there with their typical peers, then that is kind of part of the sacrifice, because those norms of behavior management are. I have a friend who her thing was, her son had autism. She was all about the academics. Like, that's all she wanted. She could give two bits about typical interaction with peers. And so she did. I mean, she advocated hard. She wanted a self-contained, almost one-on-one academic progression system, her son was taught during the school system by himself with a one-on-one, basically. That was his model. That was what she was happy with. She gave up, for lack of a better word, inclusion in the general education setting, because for her, with him, that was her holy grail. Exactly. I mean, that was her piece. For me, as you guys know, it's always been inclusion for Elliot, that he needs to be in that setting. And I think the hard thing is, when we work with people, what this means of what they want for their child varies from parent to parent. And then you have school systems that have systems set up that are trying to perform to these educational measures, but that don't take into account, to Penny's point, the human element. And so one of the things that, when I go in and I observe schools, I will find a kiddo who's falling behind academically, you know what I mean? And that becomes a reason for them to be pulled out. And you have parents who are wanting more. And I go, well, when is the child in the general education setting? And typically they'll tell me there's behaviors or things like that. Well, I will discover the kid is attempting to being included in art or in music or in PE, or in the 45 minutes before, beginning of the day, or the 45 minutes at the end of the day, none of which are the academic access curriculum points of the day, and all of which are the hardest time for people who learn differently when it comes to behavioral regulations. They're the most they aren't
They're not structured.
They aren't structured. They're the most unstructured
So
components
how can
of the
they
school
learn
day.
a rule if everything's different every
And
time
every
they walk
single
in?
time. Exactly. And that becomes part of the question. For now, this is hashtag everyone talking about hashtag everything. Good Sunday morning. This is hashtag everyone talking about hashtag everything. I'm Kate Doherty with the lovely Laura. The penniless, we are not penniless this morning. Practically perfect Penny
Good,
is
I like
here.
that.
Radical Ryan is. My Magnificent Mac is not here today. However, on this show today, we've been kind of hopefully trying to talk about communication. When we were on break, Ryan kind of had a way that he wanted to lead with us, talking about the parent component.
Oh, 100%. No, I was piggybacking off of both of you, but mainly with Penny, what you had said about it comes down to like a parent decision. 100%. Like, my whole thing is again, I've said this before, I have 3-year-olds, so we're not in the school aspect of it, but they go to daycare that kind of has like a little bit of an educational curriculum kind of thing to get them going kind of stuff. But we made the decision of once they got moved into the 3-year-old class, that because they're identical twins, we split them up. And that was our decision that we wanted from a social aspect to have them not be so reliant on one another. You know, and like, hey, they're going to see each other at recess or outside doing things because the classes do stuff together. But when they are in their own classroom, they need to be more independent. And because for the longest time, or when they were younger, which again isn't that young, but like twins, they were always connected at the hip. And there's nothing wrong with that because they're twins. But then it got to the point where like once we get into the educational aspect, more than likely they are going to be in separate classes. And so you kind of want to start that now. And so it kind of comes, and the reason I say all of this is not to say that we have it all figured out, is that it comes down to having the communication with, whether that's daycare, whether that's obviously from a school front, having that curriculum kind of figured out of what exactly do you want out of this? You know, what exactly do you foresee benefiting your child? I think there's another component to it, though, Kate. I don't mean to. I know you, but my thing is going back to also something that you both said. It's not on the school to quote unquote parent and do certain things. So I do think as a parent, you need to find a balance within yourself with the school that they are going to provide X amount. And there are things that they are, quote unquote, required to do and or will do if you talk to them that maybe you don't, but it is up to talking to them. They're not expected to do everything. That does come back to you as a parent having to parent and having to help that along.
Yes.
You know, you can't just rely on, well, they're in Miss Smith's class. I don't know why I decided.
I know. Why did you pick that word?
That was terrible. They're in that class, and you want the social aspect, and they're going to get that hopefully naturally. But to other points, like that teacher has all these other kids that they're also trying to deal with. So you're hoping that the kid just gets that, but then it's on you as the parent to, after the fact, kind of continue to reinforce those things and do those kind of things. It's a two-way street here.
Yes.
But I do
Yes,
think
I
you
agree.
need to understand when it comes to schools and the educational frameworks they're set up. And again, I wholeheartedly, it is on the parents, meaning to explain.
100%, yeah.
And I think it's very important, though, when parents are speaking to educational systems and they're in these different settings, to clarify.
Right,
Like,
absolutely.
what is your end goal? If academics are not your most important, and like because you say I'm going to supplement academics,
Right.
then that conversation, then you need to say to the school, I want to focus on their their interactions with their peers. I want to focus on their ability to sit and, listen quietly. I want them, and you can have behavioral goals. You can have, those can be written, and they can be, more than your academic goals.
Absolutely.
And you can, but I do believe it's a misnomer that right now, no different than like earlier when we were talking about, parents are told by, quite frankly, that, go in and you ask for it all. You ask for it all. You want inclusion, and you want therapy, and you want, somewhere along the line, something has to give.
100%, yeah.
I mean, and you've got to figure out what you're going to do.
I don't know who tells parents this, because I wasn't told anything. So I went into my first IEP meeting completely blind, completely clueless, and completely bullied.
Interesting.
And then the reason I say bullied is, and it wasn't actually my kid. I went with a friend because she just wanted someone to come take notes. And they were all wondering why I was there, and she introduced me as her lawyer, which was highly inappropriate. I'm like, no, I'm not even licensed in Illinois. I'm just here to take notes.
Sets the tone.
But she didn't know any of the things that you're saying.
Okay.
And that group of 6 people that would have been sitting across from her, and she would have been sitting all by her lonesome had I not shown up with her. It was intimidating. Bullying, maybe a little strong, but
I get what you mean.
totally
Well,
intimidating.
so-
and you don't know what to ask for or how to explain yourself. And then you get all caught up in the moment, and then you can't explain yourself. So being prepared
Yeah, well,
to know what you wanted, which is what you're saying. I'm just reiterating.
And that framework that you're talking about. So the most I've ever been in, and it's been 18 people, 1 parent.
Oh my gosh.
18. It's happened 3 times, and
Holy cow.
when I see that, and you can say, well, that's just a school being prepared. 18 people and 1 parent is intimidating as HE double hockey sticks.
Yeah.
Yes.
It is, and that is a really not cool. And actually, I had one happen last year in an early childhood preschool setting, not on like outside of this area. How's that? And then one was probably about 10 years ago. And that part there is like, a school's response would be, we're just doing our due diligence to make sure we have everybody at the table when it's time. That's awesome. However, this doesn't feel like a conversation. This feels like a mandate. And some of this really has to change. And I guess I'm kind of piggybacking on, like, right now, either parents don't know what to ask, or they have been where they have gone to some trainings and they've gotten just about this much of information, and they're told to ask for everything. So either you have a parent who's asking for absolutely everything, or a parent who has zero idea what on earth I could even ask for. And so you have this problem, and you can say, oh, well, Kate, like, they all get the parental notice rights. Do you realize the kind of $50 million words those things are written in?
Right.
I mean, I could wallpaper my house with how many times I've been handed those. And I mean, like, a general mom or dad, here's what they want. They love their kid. They want them to go to school.
Yeah.
They want them to make friends. And they want to come out preferably with an ability to read, write, and maybe do a little math. In some kids, that's very doable and very plausible. And others, there may be, like Elliot, with all due respect, he's going to need a calculator to do math for the rest of his life.
Same.
Period.
I think also what you're trying to do is just it goes back to communication. It's not only the parent being the advocate and communicating what they think would be best for their child, which is absolutely valid. I also think that it's the communication between the school people, but I also think it comes back to trust. And the reality is, as a parent, I think I know what's best for my child, absolutely, hands down, but I don't know what's best for my child all the time academically. I know what's best for my child when I'm the person 100% in control of that child. You know what I mean? And I think it comes down to having that ability to sit around the table, whatever number of people it is, from the academic
conversation
and
instead
have
of
a
mandate to use.
conversation and have a discussion, so that you know I can trust you. I know you have my child's interests as the most important thing for you at this time, even though I don't know if I understand it, but the reality is I'm not a trained academic professional. So I need to rely on that person's perspective.
But part of the problem with, and now we're in the third segment when she
Yeah.
just said that, part of the problem is if I have an educational professional who doesn't believe in inclusion and they want my child not allowed in the general education setting, they're a professional and now they're using their status as a professional against me who says, I want my kid in the general education classroom. I'm willing to give up some things, but I really feel access to that general education curriculum is what's in his best interest. And then there's very often a significant blowback where they say, oh no, but they're 2 or more grade levels below. And you say, well, they aren't the only ones. But it becomes a very interesting conversation. So it's not really that simple. But my guess, my pieces, when you were talking about that communication component, those are the things those are the conversations we need to be having in the constructs of all the stuff that's going on with the Department of Health and Human Service and all the stuff with the Department of Education. Because if I say to you, as a parent, I'm willing to give on certain factors, and this is truly like, these are what, then I need you as a school to work with me to figure out how we need to make that happen. And if I'm instantly getting hit with a professional who says, nope, not doing it, you got a problem. And unfortunately, most of the times when you hit those situations, it's really unfortunate because I don't know what to tell people other than find a different school.
Find a different school. Exactly.
And that's unfortunate.
And that's tough. And obviously that's not easy either.
And those are tough conversations to have. I mean, they are tough conversations to have, but I think at some point people need to start having these conversations instead of that whole, for lack of a word, the current governmental bureaucracy view that somehow you're going to be doing academics 8 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week, because it's just not a reality. Anyway, I hope I didn't depress anybody today. I hope you've had a good week. I hope maybe we shed a little bit of light on conversations, both the frustrations between parent, teacher, therapist, and school. And anyway, and quite frankly, and what inclusion means and how it can be totally different for everyone. Hashtag everyone.
That's right.
There you go.
All right. For now, this is hashtag everyone talking about hashtag everything. See you next week.